Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPLGraduates and welcome back to another video. Where in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Gameweek 23 transfer targets. There's a lot coming up on the horizon with that double game week now just around the corner. So time to be focusing on getting as many doublers as you can with reason, of course. We're going to go into the pros and cons of some of those players and some of the other players that may not necessarily have a double game week coming up just around the corner, but are still good assets nonetheless.
Okay then, so yeah, we're going to get kick-started off into the defenders. Kanate is coming up first. Obviously, it really is team dependent on how you're going to move into this double game week. I don't think necessarily there's one better than the other, whether going double defence or going with two attackers. It can be played either way at the moment, and Kanate obviously offers the cheapest entry point into that Liverpool defence. Which is obviously ranked second best over this season. Ipswich at home this week is obviously a nice entry point if you wanted to get on him earlier. He got the rest in the Champions League against Lille, which is good as well, so you'd expect him to start at the weekend. What I would note as well with these Premier League fixtures for Liverpool, like they are genuine, like it's in their hands to win the Premier League right now. So I really don't expect too much rotation from this generic 11 that we see week in, week out, whether it's Kanate, Trent, as the two defenders that sort of get rotated a bit in Champions League. Likewise with the attack for Diaz and Gakpo, I expect them to play more often than not, or at least start anyway. So yeah, for me, I think Kanate is a good option. Obviously, like I say, cheapest entry point into that defence. The attacking output isn't really there. It's quite low, but it's what you'd expect from a centre back. So what's your thoughts on him, Ben? Do you think it's a good option if you've already got maybe like a Trent and Salah?
Yeah, I think it depends how risk adverse that you're going to be with this. With Konate, Van Dijk, all the Liverpool defenders, they've got a higher floor than the attackers because of the rotation, like we spoke about. Although we don't think it's going to be that much over the double game week and sort of for those 2 game weeks, before and after. Liverpool, of course, wrapped up the Champions League now, so they'll rotate during that. And they've got a couple of sort of games and some good breaks in between each of the games. So yeah, the only downside is the ceiling is not going to be as high. With a Konate, you're probably going to be looking at 12 points there. Okay, so next up in the defenders, we've got Lucas Digne of Aston Villa, and I do believe that he is a really good buy for this week with the fixtures that Villa have got coming up. Of course, in midweek in the Champions League, he came off on around 60 minutes, so the minutes shouldn't be too much of a worry either. We know that in any given moment, Digne can do what he does best and get benched, but we haven't seen that too much this season. He played a lot of minutes. The XGI isn't too bad. It's not the worst. I think it's a differential option. This is going to be a really sort of good option to go for. There's potential high upside with the pick. Of course, Villa sort of fighting on the European front as well as Premier League. There's that element of sort of like Digne may not get the full 90, but if you can get 60 or 70 minutes out of him, then that's absolutely perfect. If they can keep clean to those 70 minutes, Villa have conceded sort of at 4 times so far this season, as we know. Josh, is Digne a decent option?
Yeah, I think for the short term he is. If you're looking to sort of bridge the gap now between sort of now and that sort of blank game week, obviously Villa are likely to blank in the game week 29. So I think he is a decent option. 13 big chance involvement so far this season is really high. Admittedly, a lot of them have been missed by particularly Ollie Watkins. He's got high big chances missed so far this season. So something to bear in mind a little bit. I think the attacking threat in terms of the Villa defence is the best you're going to get. As I say pretty much all the time, Villa defensively is not my favourite. They seem to concede a goal almost all the time, which is obviously for us fantasy managers annoying, despite their defensive data being really, really strong. So yeah, it's something to sort of caveat it with. But like you say, with those 3 fixtures against teams who are either lacking goal scorers or just got too many injuries, etc., I think there is genuine ability for them to get at least 2 out of the next 3 clean sheets in those games. Okay, then, so we're going to move on to the midfielders now. We're going to stay with Aston Villa and with Morgan Rogers. The fixture run right now for the next three for Villa is the best in the league, by some distance as well in terms of fixture runs too. West Ham at home, Wolves away, Ipswich at home. He's currently 5.5 million, and I'd actually argue this is probably the last spell of the season where you really need Morgan Rogers if you are to own him. After this, Villa's run does look pretty poor, barring I think a game week 30 fixture against Southampton. So it's something to consider if you are an owner already, is that you probably want to keep him for this spell and then sort of take him out afterwards. As I say, fixture run's really good. He's just been relatively consistent, especially when he's playing with Ollie Watkins, which I personally expect to see Ollie Watkins continue in that forward position. He's obviously been scoring a lot of goals since Duran has been out. What's your thoughts, Ben? Do you think he's a better asset when Watkins is playing, or does it not matter if it's Duran or Watkins?
I don't think it matters too much, to be honest. Quality is there with Morgan Rogers, and he is going to be that consistent asset at 5.5 million. You can't expect returns every week, but every other week he's going to get something. So yeah, I do think he's a fantastic asset regardless. The fixtures coming up are good, and I do agree he's probably, like, I don't like to sort of use the word essential, but he's very sort of highly advised to consider Morgan Rogers within your team over the short term. Looking longer term, you can move him on, but of course we've seen so many times this season you can get stung by benching Morgan Rogers because he does perform against the bigger teams as well. So you've got to bear that in mind. I think he is relatively fixture proof in that regard. And you know, we've so many managers been burned by those £5 to £5.5 million transfers in and out. So you're almost worth sort of like picking him, sticking him, and going with him for sort of the medium term at least. So next up is Bryan Mbeumo from Brentford, and the next two fixtures, you know, from the FDR perspective, suggest that it's going to be sort of relatively difficult. But I think for Mbeumo and from Brentford, they're almost sort of really decent fixtures. They score a lot of goals. Of course, earlier in the season, we were mentioning that the data wasn't quite up there. I think that's something to consider, yes, but he is still a talismanic figure in that Brentford team. Of course, with the big chance involvements that he's getting, is fairly good. So yeah, in my opinion, I think he's a good buy. You can probably hold off the transfer for a couple of game weeks if you wanted to, because of course so many managers are focusing their midfield transfers on that double game week. That, you know, for myself, I may be sort of prioritising maybe like a transfer in elsewhere and waiting a couple of weeks. So you can do that if you want, but I don't think it is too bad of a transfer to do right this second.
Yeah, he's someone who I generally might be bringing in this week myself. I've got Bruno Fernandes. Similar if you've got like an Erdegaard as well. Need to free up a little bit of cash. I think he gives you that opportunity to drop maybe, you know, $500,000 to 0.7 million, and you can, you know, upgrade maybe into the defence or in the attack, and then have equally just as a good attacker in your sides. Obviously he's on penalties. Probably, I know obviously we went through that phase where he's not having as many shots, but I'd say that, you know, he's still really clinical when he does get those opportunities. So having someone like that is great. Like you mentioned, I don't think the entry point's terrible. I'd prefer it if it was Tottenham rather than Palace. I think Palace defensively have improved quite a lot so far this sort of last couple of months over the Christmas period, especially when Mark Gahey is playing as well. But yeah, the Tottenham entry point's fantastic. You know, we saw what Everton did to them last weekend, so I think Brentford at home as well could be even better. So yeah, if you're looking for that mid-price midfielder, not wanting to go to a Liverpool midfielder like a Diaz, then I think Bryan Mbeumo is probably the best asset that you've got going right now. Plus the fixtures after this as well are really good for a really nice run up until that sort of game week 29 blank game week, which he obviously plays in as well. So if you're not free hitting for that week, then he's another big plus for that. Okay then, so mentioning a double game week midfielder, and we've got Luis Diaz coming up at the moment. 7.5 million. Obviously the fixtures are really good over the next four for Liverpool. Ipswich at home, Wolves at home, and then Bournemouth away, Everton away, obviously in that double. Really nice fixtures. Obviously a lot of people's questions aren't going to be about Luis Diaz as an asset, it's going to be about the minutes. Obviously he played 75 minutes against Lille in midweek. Obviously Darwin Núñez played 90, Salah played 90. I'd expect him to start probably 3 out of the 4 if I had to sort of guess. I expect him to play against Ipswich this weekend. Obviously, the injury to Jota really improves the minutes, in my opinion, for Gakpo and Diaz. I think if Jota was fit, we'd probably be seeing it hit a little bit less minutes-wise. Obviously, Ben can have his own take in a moment. But for me, I think if you've got Diaz or Gakpo, you're going to get at least 3 starts, maybe even 4, just because of the breaks in between the games. Obviously, in between the double game week, Bournemouth away, Everton away, you've got the EFL Cup game, the semi-final second leg, you've got the FA Cup game against Plymouth, and then it's the Everton game. I wouldn't expect any of these first choice guys to play in that FA Cup game, so it's just a question of that Bournemouth game. And the thing is, Bournemouth are playing so well that can they afford to rest players against Bournemouth away when they're in that sort of title chase? So yeah, what's your thoughts on that, Ben, in terms of the minutes of those attackers?
Yeah, I think the minutes are fairly secure for Luis Diaz. I agree with you. There's a lot of time between the games, but I also think you can caveat that with there's a lot of time for Jota to get back fit, which is the only sort of perspective and an additional perspective you just need to consider. But I agree with you. I envisage 3, maybe 4 starts for Luis Diaz. Yes, I think he also is at risk of coming off on 60, 70 minutes, but for a double game week player, I think you can take the risk, and the ceiling is really high. For me, I do prefer the Liverpool sort of double up on the attack rather than the defence, because this is here to really sort of attack, and you can almost go, triple captain Salah and then get another attacker, which is really useful for managers to attack the double game week. If you're looking sort of safety wise, then you could consider defenders, but I'd much rather have the higher ceiling potential, especially with the minutes just looking a little bit more secured now. Okay, so moving into the forwards, and one asset that I think has gone a little bit under the radar, especially with Mbeumo, etc., being the popular pick, is Johan Witter, and the stats are actually pretty incredible for him in terms of the XG chances. His big chance involvement is on a similar level to Mbeumo, but he is so much more clinical and is getting much bigger and higher XG chances than Mbeumo. He's obviously sort of playing a lot higher up the pitch. He's getting his chances in higher XG areas, which is really, really good. Of course, this is also from open play as well. He's not on the penalties for Brentford, which is fantastic. I do genuinely think he is probably on par with Mbeumo in terms of value, if not better value. Of course, the only downside is that he takes up one of those free pressure striker spots, which is, a pretty big downside, because the upside of picking a double game week player or picking sort of like we've got 2 really informed strikers at the moment. To pick a third one's going to be quite difficult. Josh, Johan Witter is a good asset, right?
Yeah, I think if you need a forward, and I think this applies to people maybe who are not as hot on João Pedro, if you need to get up from him, obviously these fixtures aren't too bad, João Pedro, but obviously the expected data has not been as good as what we've seen in previous seasons and stuff. I think Johan Witter sort of provides that out right now. Obviously, like we've said with Mbeumo, the fixtures next to, Palace mainly is not an ideal entry point. I'd much rather it against Spurs, but I think they're still going to go there and create chances like they do against almost everyone. He has shots in most games as well. I think he had 2 or 3 against Liverpool, which is pretty decent considering how good of a defence they are. So yeah, I really like him, and it's the price point which sort of enables you to maybe get some more premium players if you're looking to get Trents, Gabriels, players like that in your team still. Witter sort of opens that up. Okay then, so talking about another informed striker, it's Jean-Philippe Mateta. Really, really in form at the moment. He's just scoring goals for fun, it seems, and ticking along nicely. Only 5.5% ownership. So if you are looking for a differential, this is one of those options. At 7.3 million, it's not too expensive, and there are a lot of other players around that price point, so you can flip-flop between a few of them. The fixtures right now for Palace, again, are still decent. Brentford at home is a good fixture. Obviously, defensively, they're definitely not as strong as they are going forwards. United away, defensively, been really poor still, and Everton at home, under Moyes, it seems like they're not maybe as solid as what they were under Dyche, because they're attacking more, if that makes sense. So, yeah, some decent fixtures there for Palace. My main caveat with any Palace players and Newcastle players at the moment is that they are likely to blank in Gameweek 29. It's not for certain, but it's very, very likely. So I would just pump the brakes if you are not going to free hit that week, because obviously you're going to have someone like a Mateta who you don't really want to bench in that scenario, because you'll probably have the likes of Salah, Isak, players that you've built up value in. So benching one of those guys like a Mateta who you've only just going to bring in, I probably wouldn't recommend it too much. Saying that though, if you want to just attack the fixtures and you don't really care, he is a fantastic option, right, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. He is a great option. I do think for those that are free hitting in 29, like it's a decent, really decent option to look at. Of course, nothing's really too confirmed yet, so we'll just have to wait and see on that. But yeah, really do like him as an asset, and I do think, again, the only downside is that there's 3 striker spots. Like, if we could have all of these players in up top, the Vistas, Matetas, Isaks, etc., then we'd be laughing. But we can only have 3. I do think Mateta is a fantastic buy again, with the form, because he's such a purple patch player. The run may sort of end in 3, 4, 5 game weeks, but for now, I don't see him not blank. I think he's going to return in 2 of the next 3 at least. Okay, so next up is a player that I'm genuinely considering bringing in for this game week. It's Cody Gakpo of Liverpool. Of course, the minutes are a little bit lower than sort of some of the other assets that we've talked about up front. However, over the next 3 game weeks and 4 games, we think that the minutes are going to be relatively secure for Gakpo. Like we said, like Ipswich, I think he starts. He's had the rest in midweek, which was fantastic to see as well. So yeah, I do think Gakpo is probably pushing towards the standout 3rd pick for the Liverpool assets for me. Of course, like you're looking at the stats, the big chance involvement's a little bit down. However, taken to the fact of the minutes, it's actually sort of on par with some of the other strikers that we've seen so far in this video. He is overperforming in terms of the goals in particular. I don't think that's such a bad thing, because he's a really good finisher, and he's just one of those players that finishes chances really well. So for me, I think this is the 3rd Liverpool asset that I'm going to bring in. Josh, what about you? What are your thoughts on him as a 3rd Liverpool asset?
Yeah, I think you're correct in saying in terms of the upside, he is the best. I think, again, can't guarantee minutes, but I'd expect to start in at least 3 of them, probably 4 of them, just because he seems to have nailed down that left wing spot. We don't really even see Diaz play there a lot at the moment. I could be wrong, of course, so don't take that with a bit of a pinch of salt. I can't predict the future, but I would expect 3 at least starts in those next 4 games. Again, I like the pick just because how easy he is to get out of as well. Like I mentioned with Mateta, the price point is quite flexible. You can move to a lot of different options when you do want to jump off him, which probably will be after that Wolves game, because Liverpool's fixtures don't look great. Obviously, Liverpool are due to blank in 29 as well if they do beat Spurs in that second leg. So something to bear in mind as well if you're thinking more longer term. But over those next 4, he is a prime asset. The upside is with him. The only thing that I would maybe caveat if you're looking at between Diaz and him is that Diaz is going to have to do a lot less to get the same sort of points. Obviously, just being a midfielder, getting the extra point for a goal, extra point for a clean sheet. So yeah, just bear that in mind. But I think Cody Gakpo for me would be my favourite attacker if I was going for one. Okay then, so on to the final forward for this week, and it's going to be Ollie Watkins. Again, like I mentioned when talking about Morgan Rogers, just in form at the moment, scoring goals for fun, which is good to see. Just a decent asset. Like if you held him throughout the whole season, you'd be pretty well off by the end of it. He's one of those season keepers. 15 returns so far this season, not necessarily matching the heights of last year, but that was an absolutely outstanding season last season. 33 big chance involvements. It's just crazy, like the amount of big chances that he gets. If he was just a little bit more clinical, we'd be talking about a must-have asset right now. Obviously, the fixtures are ideal. So if you're looking to, obviously, if maybe you've set yourself up for the double already, and you're looking to maybe get someone in that forward position, Watkins, I think, provides a decent option. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, he is a very decent option. I think the stats back that up. The price point is just quite an awkward one to get to in the first place, which is the only caveat. So for most managers who've got sort of like a Chris Wood, maybe a João Pedro and an Alexander Isak, say, it might be a little bit difficult to get up to him and sort of still have that Liverpool triple up, and those sort of decent assets at 7 to 8 million in the midfield, like your Mbeumo's and Gordon. So you are going to have to make a sacrifice to bring him in. Is it worth it over the short term? I think potentially, if you want to take that risk, like there's always that sort of outside chance that Duran comes in, etc. That's always going to be there as long as Duran's at Aston Villa. But yeah, in terms of form, he is in really good form, and the fixtures line themselves up quite nicely for Watkins and Aston Villa. So yeah, I don't mind the pick at all. It's probably not for me just because of the awkward price point, but yeah, I can see the appeal if you've got a bit of money in the bank.
Then, so that wraps up our Game Week 23 transfer targets. Let us know who you're thinking about bringing in this week. Should be an interesting one. I think me and Ben are looking to make some transfers this week. I know Ben's favouring Gakpo. I might be favouring the Konate defensive route. So it should be an interesting one come around that double game week.
Yeah, absolutely. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
We'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.
Oh, you may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.